We're back.
We sure are. Welcome everyone to PCCS's EmPower Hour special episode of season 3. We're getting back into the swing of things, so it's a little weird now to be back on screen. My name's Alyssa D'Augusto.
My name is Kevin Roman.
And we are here with a special guest co-host, Miss Alexa Donnelly.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today, Alexa.
Thanks for having me.
So today we have a really exciting guest to get our season 3 kickstarted. We have the Director of Education at the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, also known as the NADSP, Mr. John Raffaele. Hey, John. Thank you so much for joining. Hi.
Hello. I'm glad to be here. Hello, Alexa and Kevin and Alyssa and everybody.
Everybody.
Well, we're so thankful to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with us. I really think we're going to have a really great show ahead. So, John, can you tell us, who are you? Can you tell us a little bit about you?
I'm a man of mystery and intrigue. I'm very wealthy. I live in a castle. No, that's not me. All kidding aside, first, thank you so much for even inviting me in. And representing the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, which I can't wait to tell you all about. But who I am, guys and gals, and whomever else is listening, I started my journey in 1986. I was 20 years old, so you can do the math, people. I grew up in New York. I'm a New Yorker. I still live in New York. I live up in Woodstock, New York, in the Catskill Mountains. But I grew up in Poughkeepsie, or near Poughkeepsie, and I was 20 years old in 1986, and I needed a job. I needed a job, and I was going to be a rock star. That's what I was going to be. Everybody, I was playing bass in a rock and roll band that was going to eventually be famous.
You do have a performer's energy about you.
So
that's where it comes from.
That's it, baby. That's it.
There it is.
As you can see, I'm not a rock star. What I did, I was going to move to California I graduated high school in 1984. Was in and out of college, and I was finding myself, all that stuff that 20-year-old people do, right? And so I needed a summer job, and it was June of 1986. And so I look in the paper. That's where you used to find employment, in newspapers. Remember that? Now it's what is it? Indeed, and what's it called? Indeed, or whatever it's called, or Monster, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Tweet. But I looked in the Poughkeepsie Journal in the classified section, and I saw this advertisement for what I thought was a camp counselor. I said, "This is perfect. This is perfect. I'll get a job in the summer, working with kids, rowing canoes up in the mountains, campfires, get $6 an hour." And so I called them up. And they said, "Oh, yes, we're looking for people. Please, can you come tomorrow for an interview?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I need a job." So it's perfect. Summer job, work with kids, and move to California in September. Perfect, right? Thanks. And so I go the next day to this camp. I didn't look at the advertisement close enough. It wasn't a camp. It was a campus. What the place was, they weren't looking for camp counselors. They were looking for childcare workers. This was a place called Holy Cross Campus, run by Pius XII Youth and Family Services. This place was a residential treatment center for 120 boys and girls that were placed there by the juvenile court system, by the family court system of New York State. These were kids that were abused, neglected, truant. Lots of psychiatric disabilities, some of the kids likely with intellectual disabilities. And what they were looking for, not was a camp counselor. I didn't know I had no idea. I thought I was going to a camp. I go to the personnel office. They hired me. I'm a kid myself, 20 years old. They hired me. I had long hair and, all that. And these kids were 13 to 18 years old. And what they were looking for were childcare workers. They hired me immediately, because they needed staff. Does that sound familiar?
Sounds like the same crisis we're still in.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it something? Isn't it something? So anyway, point of this is I'm telling you this for a reason, Alyssa and everybody. So I took the job. I didn't know what it was. So the campus, by the way, it's all these. It doesn't exist anymore. It's long gone. It's been torn down. Thank goodness. But these were dormitories: boys' cottage, girls' cottage. 60 boys, 60 girls. There was a school. There was a gym. It was it's self-contained campus where the kids lived. And so my job was to be in the boys' cottage, to be a childcare worker, a direct support professional. So they gave me 3 days of training. Guess what? Same training that the direct support professionals of 2021 get. I swear to gosh. Bloodborne pathogens, first aid. What else? Of course, all the abuse prevention stuff, all that good stuff. And we got trained something called therapeutic crisis intervention, which is TCI, which is basically how to run from the kids. But I'll wrap this story up, and because it'll make sense. So that summer job lasted 8 years. Obviously, I didn't go to California. My girlfriend broke up with me, and that was not the reason to go to California. At least I won't admit that. And I wound up falling in love with this work and with these young men and women. And they shaped my life, really. And these were kids that were largely, probably 60% were from New York City. The rest were from, all around New York State. They were all New York State kids. But these were very, very troubled young men and women. But doing direct support with them in those years framed what I wanted to do. But here's the rub. In those years, working with these kids, 60 hours, 70 hours a week, going camp. Well, we did go camping once in a while. We went on vacations and stuff like that. But I was with them in their life space, ongoing, every day. There was professionals that worked here too. Okay, there were case managers, there were social workers, there was a psychiatric nurse, all these wonderful people. But these wonderful people were over in the administration building. And they were wonderful people, don't get me wrong. But every once in a while, they'd come over to the cottage where I was with the kids and where all the other direct support professionals were with the kids. And they would bring us their behavior support plans, the individual support plans that they created over in their air-conditioned office. And we would be, okay, here's the plan, John, for our Raul. And I'm looking at the plan. If I do this with Raul, he's going to kick my butt. There was a disconnect. The people that spent the most time with the clientele had the least authority. They were treated, not that we weren't treated respectfully, but we weren't respected as a profession. And we had no means to be part of a treatment team. We were kind of glorified babysitters. That never sat well with me. And also, we didn't get paid a whole lot. I saw the writing on the wall after about 8 years. I got promotions and all that, but I saw the writing on the wall that, I don't like this system. This system is not right. I went to social work school. I went to Yeshiva University in New York City to get my social work degree. I got an MSW from there in 1995. I graduated. And since that time, all I've done, I'm not really a clinical social worker. I'm a group worker. Since that time, my community, my group has been the development of direct support as a profession. That's the social work that I do. And I've done that working at a provider organization, much like yours, as a trainer, as an administrator. But also, I've continued to work on a larger scale with what we now know, what you now know you're going to be introduced to. And you're all members of, which you might not know it or not. And maybe Alexa can talk about that. The National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals. I've been affiliated with this organization for probably since its inception, but I've been employed about the last 11, 12 years. And in my employment, my job is to create training and educational resources for direct support professionals. And the reason I was hired is because I was a direct support professional. I know the game. And the reality is, right now, we're at a time in history, in 2021, we're seeing that we say the chickens are coming home to roost. We can't continue treating direct support professionals like entry-level employees. They're not. They've never been. That was never an entry-level job back in 1986 doing what I did. It's not an entry-level job at your organization when you're doing direct support. It's a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing, what we're going to do, and we're going to talk about today, how do we make this a bona fide, recognized profession, just like social work?
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's my background, and that's what, that's basically what drove me to do what I do, and I'm a one-trick pony, guys. Don't ask me about much else. I don't know much else. So
I don't know if I believe that, John. I'm going to be honest. I think after just this 11 minutes of talking with you, I think that there's a lot more that we need to unpack there. But what a story. It really sounds like a lot of stories of a lot of the DSPs that we connect with, that you're in it for the mission. You're doing it because you love it. It's really not at that point for the money. You're doing it because you love the people that you're working with. So it sounds like you really found your calling, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
So now, as far as the NADSP goes, I'm not familiar with the NADSP. Tell me a little bit about it.
Sure. Here's the big broad brushstrokes, right? It was established in pretty much 1995, 1996 by John F. Kennedy Jr. That's our founder. And you think about what the Kennedy dynasty, the Kennedy family did for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities since his dad, John F. Kennedy Sr., obviously was the president of the United States, had a sister with a significant disability. So he had some skin in the game in terms of what he did when he became president. He blew the doors off of institutions. He put money in and policy in place to put people with disabilities in a better spot in society. And the Special Olympics, largely from the Kennedy Shriver family, that the Special Olympics spun out of kind of their family, and so many other things. But John Jr., who was he lived in New York City, and he was a beautiful person. He was never hit with fame like some people can be kind of famous and turn into jerks. This dude, I would see him in the Lower East Side on a skateboard or in roller skates. He would take the subway. But John F. Kennedy Jr., beyond his being a really cool guy, he saw in his role in creating the NADSP, the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, he saw back in the 80s and 90s as we were starting to get people more into the community and starting to, group homes became more popular and opened up. Certainly in New York City in the 80s and 90s, there was a blossoming of people with disabilities engaging in the community as they should. He saw the people that were largely responsible for this were the direct support workers. And they were, once again, and that's what I saw back in the 80s, underqualified. Not that they weren't good at what they did. They were underqualified. They had no credential. They were underpaid. They were not trained very well. And by the grace of whatever, your God, your goddess, these thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities, thanks to direct support workers, were able to get a piece of our community pie. And so he said that we need to do something for this workforce. And he worked with policy. He said this organization needs to be established. And what we are, to answer you the question of what the NADSP is, and you're all members of it. You're all members of it. We'll get into the details of what that means later. But he said direct support professionals need a place of membership. They need a place where they can go and learn things, where their knowledge can be spread. We need to have an organization that advocates with and for direct support professionals. And that's what we are. We're a membership organization. We're a policy advisory organization. Now we're getting more and more. We're getting more audience in Washington, D.C. and in state capitals to fight for the wages. And that's only one part of it, guys. That's very important. It's more than wages that we need to fight for. We need to fight for credentialing and certification and respect for what direct support professionals do. So John F. Kennedy, the founder, that's what he established, and that's what continues to this day to grow. And that's what the NADSP is.
Nice. Love that. Former DSP here, so I know those struggles very well to this day. So if I'm a DSP, that all sounds beautiful, lovely. I'm sure every DSP could acknowledge at least some of those things.
Yep.
Tangibly, what does the NADSP benefit me? What can I literally do within this organization?
Mm-hmm.
And just a disclaimer for all PCCS DSPs, hopefully you're watching now or you will watch in the future. We are members, so all of the benefits that you hear John speak about in these upcoming minutes,
this is for y'all.
Access to.
It's for y'all. Absolutely. And Kevin, man, that's good. I like that question because we get it a lot. So what's with the NADSP? Who cares, right? Who cares? I don't even know what's the NADSP. I think it's two dominant things that are important. One, to be part of the broader field of the profession. So get this, Kevin. There's about 1.5 million. Well, 1.5 million. We're going to round it down. 1.5 million direct support professionals. That's just working with people with intellectual developmental disabilities in the United States. And if a direct support professional doesn't understand they're part of that larger ocean of professionals, that's not okay. You need to know that you have brothers and sisters out there doing this work. And to be part of that larger group is very important for any professional. Now, Alexa, you're a social worker. I don't know if you're involved with NASW.
Yes.
That's our national organization. If you're a human resources professional, there's the SHRM, the whatever, the human resource, whatever, doctors, lawyers. National associations are important for professionals because that's the first part, to be part of the bigger. The second part, Kevin, is what these kind of organizations offer. Networking with other direct support professionals, tons and tons of training resources we have, and everybody can go. You got your passcode or whatever. You go into the member section of the NADSP.org website. We have literally hundreds and hundreds of webinars and videos, resources, all kinds of. There's this publication called Frontline Initiative, which comes out about twice a year. It's the only magazine for direct support professionals in the United States that's published. We just published. We're going to be publishing it next week, actually. Tons of news. We probably annoy people to no end with all the e-news flashes we send. We try to be careful with that because I know people get overwhelmed with if you ever bought like a pair of shoes from Zappos, you're going to get an email every day from Zappos, right?
For the rest of your life, yeah.
Yeah, for the rest of your life. Even if you unsubscribe, those suckers, they get.
Yeah.
We try not to, bombard. However, current news is important. Current news for direct support professionals is very important because generally they are so immersed and so focused on the people they're supporting, they kind of forget the bigger picture. And we don't want them to not be immersed and focused on the people they support, of course, but they got to know the bigger picture. And that's our responsibility to give that bigger picture and the resources to direct support professionals. We got a conference that we do every year. And we try to go into a different city. Obviously, the pandemic, we were going to be going to Milwaukee. That's not going to happen this year. That didn't happen last year. We're not going to be going anywhere this year. The following year, we're looking at either Pittsburgh or Cincinnati to hold a national conference. where we want to get direct support professionals together from around the country to be together, and we give them 2 or 3 days of great training and workshops. But more important than that is people get to party and hang out and network with each other. That's why people go to conferences. That's why I joined professional organizational networks, is because I want to network with people. So, Kevin, long answer to that question, but I think that's really the 2 major things that people should be aware of if they're going to be part of an organization like the NADSP.
Nice. Love that. Love that. I think it's so important that we talk about, like you said, the first part of having that, being part of that collective. I remember, and Alexa, I'm sure, knows a lot more about the background, but I remember several years ago being a DSP, and I want to say we had signs in front of Senator Andrew Lanz's office to raise the wages for DSPs, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And I remember being a DSP, and I'm like, all right, I'm working already, so I guess I should go do that then, And then seeing it in action and then actually having some tangible benefit out of it was mind-blowing, that it actually kind of worked, and kind of came into fruition, seeing how a collective could work better than just sitting and complaining about one thing on your own, So I think it's really important that the DSPs really know that there's just so many people out there that a bigger voice can be heard through the NADSP and collaborate. So I think that's a great point to make. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, amen, Kevin. And here's the thing too. We say this. We've been saying this for years to direct support professionals. This is a marathon, my friends. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. It's going to be obviously a generation before we're going to see real systemic change, right? But we have to take a page out of the playbook of the self-advocates. We got to look at the civil rights movement. We got to look at gay rights movement. We got to look at the social movements in our, specifically in our country. And if you look at those social movements, they were not led by outsiders. They were led by the people from within. And we have been, the closest we got to being within is the NADSP. All of our staff, it was 5 of us. There's not a lot of us. We're not a big, huge, giant organization with a lot of overhead. It's 5 people. All of us have done direct support. And that's important. But a movement will happen. And we're here to guide the movement. But the movement can't happen, Kevin, until those 1.5 million direct support professionals, their voices rise and go out in front of the senator's house, appropriately, and make noise.
Right.
If you all have seen, if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. Crip Camp. Crip Camp is a movie, a documentary. It's essentially about the disability rights movement in the 70s and 80s. And it's powerful. And it's all about the self-advocacy that I think, Kevin, DSPs need to embrace. Now, what do they do? I mean, that's a big question. What do? Do you go to the White House and knock on Joe Biden's door? Joe, we need more money. I don't think you want to do that, because you wouldn't make it through the lawn. You'd probably be detained. But what you can do is you begin the process talking with your local legislators. Have the organization host something where your local Staten Island politicos come in and see what you do. Because a lot of the politicians and legislators, they have no clue what direct support professionals do. They think we're angels. We're angels taking care of the disabled. Oh, please.
And I think that's interesting, because I feel like there's a huge moral value. Like, people look at what you do and they're like, "Oh, you're so great! Oh, how great is that?" But my paycheck doesn't say that, or the respect in the field doesn't say that,
Amen. And to me, what it is, it's a cop out. But it's something even deeper, Kevin. It's something deeper. It's, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I'm glad you're doing that work, because I don't want to do that work.
Because it can't be me.
You know what I'm saying?
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the untouchables. It's like the leper colony. And darn it, that we got to change that narrative. It's not that. This is professional work with people with disabilities who happen to need support. They're no different than you and I. They just need different kinds of support. And that's so but I think the larger society does not, they still don't understand that. You know what I mean? So, don't get me going. Don't get me going.
I know.
Love it.
We recently did a COVID-19 roundtable discussion, and we really focused in on the health inequities, and a lot of that came down to the workforce. And we thought it was very interesting how direct support professionals in our global pandemic were now considered essential workers. Now, how do we live up to that, calling them essential workers? How do we show up and really present them as the essential workers that they are? And I think the pandemic has really highlighted for a lot of people that are not actively involved or don't know someone in the disability community on how vital that role is.
Yeah. It's here's a story from California, and I'm sure the story happened in New York. We got this early on in the pandemic. So this is an intersection. Here's an intersection of this notion of what is an essential employee, right? But then you add to that the racial unrest that has been happening, and that certainly was sparked big time last year, right? So in California, it took quite a few months to get legislators and to get allowance for direct support professionals to be considered essential. They weren't considered essential because nobody knew what the hell they did.
This was in New York as well.
In New York, right. So it's all over the country.
Yep.
So you got that whammy where somebody's driving to their shift, and if they happen to be driving while black, pulled over, asked for their credentials. Are you essential? But I think you can see the subtext of that. A couple things going on in terms of what we also know. This workforce, the direct support professional workforce in the United States, is majority minority. Majority of the people that do this work are black or people of color. The majority of people that do this work are also women. So you've got another social issue there, the gender piece. You add all that together, right? All that together. Are you essential? What is your ethnicity or race? What's your gender? You've got the perfect storm of an alienated workforce, right? And so that's one other thing that we are pushing against all pistons. In fact, tomorrow we're doing a webinar. It's free. Please join us. It's called Black DSPs Matter is the name of this series. This is going to be the second part. It's going to be killer, man. It's going to be really good because what we're talking about are these issues. Why aren't direct support professionals essential? Why are they paid so poorly? Why are they not recognized as an authority and a professional with a professional identity? And you can trace many of these things, not all of them, but many of these things back to systemic racism and systemic issues in and around ableism. Because we don't want people with disabilities in the world. Well, I'm not saying we, but the world does not want to see people with disabilities in the world. So why would we value anybody that works with them? So that's, I think this most notion of essential, Alexa, was, and I think it still is. It's almost like an insult. Like, how dare you? Of course I'm essential, right? So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting very preachy. I do apologize. This is supposed to be light.
I was going to say my response to you. All I want to say is preach, John. Preach.
Literally bars right here.
Well, if anybody has any questions that's listening, and questions or comments, if you think I'm full of hot air, that's cool. I'm whatever. But whatever. Let's keep going.
So, I guess you guys are doing so many things, and COVID really opened up even more doors for the NADSP. I know I follow you guys on social media, so here's my shameless plug. Make sure you follow the NADSP on Facebook. I really enjoy. It's at NADSP INC. We're going to put it in the comments as well. So I noticed that you guys really do a lot. What are some ways that you guys have been able to engage DSPs into becoming members of your organization, and then combating those that are just like, I don't really need to be a part of this.
Yeah. Here's the thing: we're reliant on provider organizations like yours. You are you're champions. Your organization sees the value of having direct support professionals engage and not seeing them as a threat. To be frank and honest, there are some organizations which don't necessarily want their direct support professionals to be dangerous, so to speak. And that's the reality. Our entry into direct support professionals, how we can get them, it's limited through providers being accepting of us. We don't have a lot of like individual members, right? And so we're ultimately relying on progressive thinkers, and we're reliant on word of mouth to a degree. We're getting to the point where that Facebook page you mentioned, Alyssa, we've got about 24,000 members. Which, if you look at the math, 24,000 of 1.5 million people in the United States, that's a small fraction. We got to get to that critical mass where, by word of mouth, an organization like the NADSP, maybe we'll be able to go away, and we won't need to be there, so that the profession itself can become full on its own self-determining, self-guiding profession, right? Because right now it's 5 people advocating for 1.5 million people. That ain't going to work. Our job is to try to get these wheels in play, build that mass, right? And it ultimately is by word of mouth. What I find with the Facebook page, it's wonderful in many, many ways. I mean, we have to monitor it like very, very carefully, because there's knuckleheads out there that are just jerks. And are going to put stuff in a Facebook post that shouldn't be there and whatever. But what we see, and I think we talked about this before we went on air, we see when DSPs communicate with each other, when they give each other advice, when they have each other's backs when it comes to the profession, that's powerful. That's very powerful. And that's what we're trying to foster. We don't really want a bunch of individual DSPs to be part of the NADSP. I mean, that'd be nice. And to be one, it's like $10 or something. There's no money at all. But we're looking for the larger picture. All right. We want the movement to really start to. It gets to a critical mass, and at that point, it's hard not to listen to 500,000 people that are calling their legislators, that are calling their Congress people to rally for change. So,
John, how would you help to, I guess maybe the best word would be disarm, or help unarmor organizations that are either fearful or nervous of rallying their DSPs to be more active and to be more involved and to network with one another? Because I think you're right. I think not all organizations want that. But, to us, it seems the more that we try to get people involved, we still are at a place where, we do a lot with NADSP, but we're still at a place where some of our own DSPs are saying, I've never heard of NADSP. And so to help disarm organizations, what would, I guess, sort of your pitch be to them on why it's important for providers to sign up with NADSP and, sort of latch on to the cause?
Right. That's a great question. It's hard to answer, but I think one thing that we do to disarm, quote unquote, and I like that because it is. We want to. We're friends. We're not foes. This is also a confusion that happens with the NADSP. Sometimes organizations think we're some kind of union, like a labor union. We're not a labor union. We don't do that. In fact, we are union neutral. We don't care if a DSP works for a union or not. It doesn't matter to us.
Right.
What we're about is the profession, not the individuals. So one thing we do offer are two specific contributions that we've given to the disability community. One is our code of ethics, completely free, completely accessible. It's validated. It's been around 22 years now. And we go to organizations often that solicit us. Sometimes we say, just start with the code of ethics. And if you're not familiar with the code of ethics, it's very simple. It's 2,000 words. And what it is, it's kind of the roadmap for this work. It's the lifeblood of this work, of being a direct support professional. And the code of ethics has things in it like person-centered support. And what that says, as a direct support professional, my first allegiance is to the person I support. All other activities and functions I perform flow from that allegiance, period. That's what it's about. You know, yes, of course you work for the agency, but no, you're down at the end of the day, you're working for that person you support. Right. Not their family necessarily, not your frontline supervisor. You know, you're working for that person. So, but that's your ethical obligation. And as you can see, that's hard to do in this system. When you got a family member barking at you about, you know, why is Kevin in those socks again, John? I don't like him in the Argyle socks. You know this. Well, Kevin likes the Argyle socks. Well, I don't want him in the Argyle socks. But see those kind of things?
Yep.
How can it be person-centered with a really intense parent or brother or sister? I mean, you got to respect the parent, the brother or sister, of course. But at the same time, hey, Mom, Kevin was into these Argyle socks. He likes the color. He likes the green and the gray. He likes that. So let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. You know, so, and also the code of ethics, right? It is something we are in a system, and I hope your organization's not like this. But there's a lot of punitive stuff, right? A lot of, we're always writing people up, and DSPs get written up. We got to change that tune. If somebody's doing a bonehead maneuver, has neglected somebody, has abused somebody, time up, you're out, done, boom. We have to be more developmental.
Right.
With direct support professionals. We've got to be more person-centered with direct support professionals than we are. And I think one thing that the Code of Ethics can do, it can be that framework for helping a supervisor help a direct support professional work smarter and work ethically. So the Code of Ethics is one thing. And the other thing I think is what we offer. We offer a voice, right? A voice. We give a voice to ultimately a voiceless profession. And we try to teach that to organizations. We don't want to make your direct support professionals into anybody but the people that should be at level with your nurses, with your social workers, with your case managers. They are part of that equal team. And we got to get them up there. And when we get them up there, your services and your supports and your mission will be better served. So that's kind of how we go about it, Alexa. But ultimately, it's sometimes a non-sell. It's a rough sell, and we're not trying to sell anything other than direct support improvement.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the framework that when we've been talking with a lot of other providers that are not as invested in collectively getting DSPs, whether in our area or nationally together, it's just that when we elevate the people that are supporting the people we support, we are naturally going to elevate the quality of care that folks are getting. So that's really, sort of the what better sell could there be, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing, and we don't want providers to do this. This is the third thing that I think our primary function right now and into the next decade, our primary function is certification. We have something called the eBadge Academy. It's an electronic badging system, and it's a national system where direct support professionals can earn electronic badges for things that they do, and they kind of stack up to create a certification. And these badges are kind of determined based on how well a direct support professional does these certain competency areas, right? We use the national competency areas from the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, the CMS competencies as they're called. Many of you are probably not familiar with those, and that's okay. But you're in New York State, you're probably familiar with the direct support professional competencies from the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, right? You got those 23 competencies that you have to prove. What we do with this certification process, DSPs get the training. They take their hours. They go do the sign-in sheets, right? They accumulate their regulated training. Then they go do their work. And they get an evaluation. And then it kind of ends there. Okay. We close the loop. We want you to do your work and get credit for being really good. And by getting credit for being really good, that's where we create a certification process for direct support professionals. And this goes beyond Staten Island. This is nationwide. And we want states to begin to adopt certification processes. It could be ours, could be whatever, but DSPs need to be certified, because when you're certified, like a CNA or like a social worker or like a personal care aide even, you get paid more because you have a qualification, which DSPs don't have.
Right.
And we're trying to change that.
There's a set of core standards for folks to agree upon and adhere to. I know that I can speak a bit from PCCS's experience. We did try to roll out the e-badge system, and that's one of the reasons we didn't have much success with it yet, but it's one of the reasons that helped us really reevaluate and realize we have to start at a much more conversational level with a lot of our DSPs to help people understand why this is important, why we want to engage in this, and so that's where we're sort of redeveloping and restarting now.
I don't know if we lost John. John, you there?
Oh, hello.
Oh, hey, John.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hold on. Now can you see me?
Yep. Yes. Okay.
Back in action.
No problem. I think ultimately we need a higher level, all right? A higher level of state governments, federal government, to make it so that direct support professionals have providers get higher rates to pay direct support professionals, not just because they're warm bodies,
right,
but because they can prove that they're good at what they do.
Right.
And we don't have that.
It'll help with the universal sort of buy-in, because a lot of the DSPs, when we were sort of pushing the certifications, they were like, well, a workforce norm is that DSPs are working in, and I see someone wrote in the chat, what does a DSP mean? So a DSP is a direct support professional, and that is the frontline staff person that is typically working alongside and supporting someone with a developmental or intellectual disability. And so what we heard from a lot of our DSPs were, I work here and I work at this other agency. They're not asking me to do this. And I still, I can still work there. So why should I do it? If it's
I think just to tack onto that, like if I'm a DSP, realistically, I'm making X amount of dollars, and then I probably need a second job with the cost of living as it is. And then I'm working the direct part of it. So I'm literally with somebody my whole shift. So I can't stop what I'm doing to go and do these certifications for you. So I got to do that, on my off time? I already have another job. It's just so many things that you kind of ask of a DSP to buy into without like any concrete, tangible hope that it'll pan out, Right. So it's difficult to kind of see from the smaller perspective.
So it's totally difficult. And we rely on, once again, I go back to the organizations like yours. It's those organizations that might come up with a that, say they get the eBadge Academy. They've got to figure out how they can pay.
Right.
From internal, changing money around. That's the accountants in your organization have to figure that out, because the state and the Medicaid ain't going to pay.
Right.
So it's a bigger systemic issue. Again, that's on us. That's where we do the lobby work. We have a lobbyist now that works in Congress, at the federal level, for things in and around reimbursement rates and all that kind of good stuff. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but what ultimately this is our notion, right? And if you get an email from me ever, if you get an email from anybody from the NADSP, our catch line is quality happens at the point of interaction between the direct support professional and the person with a disability. That point of interaction, and there's 1,000 of them going on right now in your organization. There's people that are doing something, helping somebody with something, doing this, doing that, making dinner, making lunch, going to work, and you've got a staff member and a point of interaction. That point of interaction has to be what is judged as good or bad in our system. And unfortunately, that's not what we're judging as good or bad. States will come in to make sure that your group home windows are going up and down, and your fire alarm works, and your front door opens properly, and you've got accessibility. That's important. I'm not saying that's not important, but what's most important is what those direct support professionals are doing with the people that you're supporting, because that's who's out there doing this work. You can't do it, Alexa. You've got another job.
Right.
You've got to run things. And it doesn't make your job any less or more important, nor does a direct support professional's job any less or more important. But the reality is, the real proof is in the pudding. The pudding is that point of interaction.
I do think, just to kind of also chime in, I think that there's so many like moving parts that I guess a DSP might not really realize, and just kind of putting in that effort of a DSP, that buy-in. A DSP's role essentially is, at least in the framework of this conversation, buy into it, have a little faith in the process.
Yeah.
I feel like as organizations turn closer towards a person-centered model versus a system-centered, they may be a little more open to something like the NADSP. They won't feel so much like, there's all these systemic barriers necessarily. It's like, if we're saying the quality of the life will be improved by the DSPs being a part of something bigger, they have to believe that the important part is the quality of life, not the system. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
So for an organization, and then, knowing that the NADSP's role is to be the bigger brother, to look at, lobbying and bigger picture things that one single DSP can't worry about, so there's just so many moving parts to kind of work on. And I guess it's really important to reiterate to the DSPs that your role is just to buy in, just be there, just to be part of it, just to be part of this bigger picture, to give them the power, the NADSP, the power to lobby for them,
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to in terms of what our function is. Ultimately, we can't make the movement. The movement has to be made by direct support professionals. Not that we're not going to be with them and as mentoring them and helping them understand how to talk to a legislator and all that kind of business. But even beyond that, it's even in the community and direct support. I mean, I've seen direct support professionals. I can't help if I see like a group of people with disabilities. I'm looking for the direct support professional, and I'm looking to see, what are they made of? What are they doing? And sometimes I see them on their damn phone or, just not engaged, and it pisses me off. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It ticks me off when I see stuff like that. I'll even sometimes I'll approach, I say, hey, how you doing? Are you a direct support professional? Okay, cool. Wow. And I don't confront, I'm not going to do that. But I ask, oh, so tell me about how long you've been doing this. And then I tell them where what I am and what do I do. And they're like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh, whoa. I mean, get off the phone. Oh, I better get off the phone. You better not text. But my point of this is that direct support professionals have an identity crisis, right? Mm-hmm. That you hear about direct support professionals in the news, and it's generally negative stuff. Somebody's abused somebody's stolen money, whatever it might be, We don't hear the wonderful, and it's the majority of what direct support professionals are doing, the wonderful stories that happen every day, that are happening today, in Staten Island, with direct support professionals that work for your organization. They're doing wonderful things, I bet. They better be.
Yep.
But the point is, we don't hear about those things. And I think we need to. Not to exploit or not to tokenize people with disabilities. That's not the point of this. The point of this is we need to understand that direct support is a valued profession and brings value to our community. Because it's the direct support professional who's bringing that person with a disability and bringing their money into the local store to buy coffee or whatever. They're part of our economy, a huge part of our economy. Just that alone is something that we don't recognize as much. If it wasn't for direct support professionals, people with disabilities would still be locked away, and they wouldn't be part of the fabric of our economy and our society. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So, oh gosh, you got me all riled up, and I gotta go.
Unbelievable.
That's, you know what? That's actually what we're really good at, John.
It's all good. No, you can. Thank you so much. This was great. I mean, any last questions or anything? I mean, this flew by. I would love to do this again sometime.
I know. This
Absolutely. There's just so much to discuss, honestly.
Yeah.
We just hit the top of the iceberg, and I just got to say one thing. I really appreciate any organization that does what you're doing, but I'm going to say your specific organization. Alexa, we've been on the phone a few times, and trying to get to put in play things that are going to promote the direct support workforce, and your organization's doing it. And go gentle, go easy. Don't try to get it all done in a year. It ain't going to happen, And that's the nature of executives. They want things done yesterday. But it's no, I'm joking with you there. But the reality is, you're doing just by having Facebook Live with some dude from the NADSP. That in itself is a message to the people listening. I hope the people listening and watching understand that you're valued because I'm here, not because of me, but because a national organization has been invited to talk to you. That's powerful. That's powerful, and good on you all for doing that. And keep doing it. Keep doing it.
It's really our honor for having you. Thank you so much.
Man.
Yes.
Well, it's good to meet you all and talk with you all, Kevin and Alyssa and Alexa. And who else? I think Stephanie?
Oh,
Joe Vanilla. She's
Vanilla.
in the background.
She's sort of behind the scenes.
Shout out to Joe Vanilla for her great work.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much for being here with us, John. And we will be sharing this with all of our DSPs, and we hope that this can be a piece of sort of the pie that helps us get people more engaged.
Absolutely, and people hop on the Facebook site. It's a closed group. We just and we'll get you in. We'll let you in. And then secondly, go on that webpage, www.nadsp.org. With your member login, go to the resources, and oh my goodness, and you have a good time. It's a treasure chest in there, man. And you can reach me, J. Raffaele. You can totally reach me. You reach out to me. I answer emails. jraffaele@nadsp.org, which is, you can find me on the website too. So, all right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John, for your time, and we hope to have you come back. So we need you again.
I would love it. I would love it. I'd love it. My
Great.
Staten Island brothers and sisters, have a good day. All right.
You too.
Bye,
Thank
John.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.